So I've just watched the end of the Orville. Is that the most important sci-fi series on television right now? Welcome to Sci Trek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. First of all, I'm just going to very quickly apologise for doing the video like this. I didn't get my green screen out and everything, but this episode and this series, the Orville, I've just watched the last one, the Future Unknown episode, and I've just got to say, I was absolutely blown away by it. The whole series has been phenomenal. The main thing I really like is that Disney has really stepped up with this episode and actually given them enough money to produce a TV show that lived up to what it deserved for me. The first two series were great, but the special effects were never really good enough. I was thinking about the one episode where they ended up traveling through a two-dimensional space. Looked awful. It looked from the 1980s or something. It was just really, really bad. The last Starfighter special effects were much, much better. But in this series, New Horizons, and that's why they went with calling it the Orville New Horizons, because they most definitely wanted to separate it a little bit from the first two seasons and show that they were doing something new with it. Really, really stepped up. The special effects at times were excellent. I think it was on par with anything Star Trek is doing right now. We'll come back to Star Trek in a second. And as a whole, the show was produced and designed beautifully. Star Trek, though, has the Orville just become another Star Trek series? Well, at the moment, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, because Star Trek is, particularly Strange New Worlds, doing very, very well at the moment. It's back to its best, I think, with Strange New Worlds. The Orville always felt like a homage to The Next Generation for me in particular. Other people have called it a parody because of the humour that really bled through with the first two seasons. A humour that, on the whole, has been lacking from New Horizons. So could you argue it's just become another Star Trek series? Well, I don't actually think that's fair, because there is still humour. And particularly in the last episode, I think there's real grown-up, rather than silly fart jokes, which maybe we got a lot in the first two series. It's actually matured into a proper TV show with grown-up humour. Laugh out loud humour in lots and bits in the last episode. I don't want to do too many spoilers, but the Kaelon turning up to the wedding, for example, spoiler, there is a wedding, is just very, very funny. The way that Isaac has that conversation with the Prime, the way he says, well, shall we all come? And Isaac's just so, yes, that would be lovely. And then 4,000 Kaelon warships turn up. It's genuinely laugh out loud funny. Bortus is very funny in this episode as well, with all the humour with the best man speech and things. I could have done without the song at the end, I won't lie. But again, we won't go into too much of I don't want to spoil the episode if you haven't quite caught it yet. I genuinely think, though, this TV show has matured and has become a grown-up show, a grown-up sci-fi show, but it still keeps the element of the humour. This show is very much Seth MacFarlane's baby. We're going to talk about woke, because that's what a lot of people say about this show, that it is a woke show, that it's very much about agenda before story. I completely disagree with that, and I completely tell you no to be honest, if you think this show's woke, you never watch Star Trek ever, because lots of Star Trek and things were always woke. They always talk about racism and things like this. I actually think Seth MacFarlane does put the story first, always has done. He is a massive sci-fi fan, and it just shows his geekdom really just come out in this series. But also, he isn't a conservative, let's be honest. He is probably a Democrat. He is quite liberal in his views. That does shine through in the show. But he also does it in quite thoughtful ways. A lot of the things within the story, like when we talked about suicide and stuff in very earlier episodes, he did actually try to write in both sides of certain arguments and create, a thoughtful episode. Rather than just telling you what's right and wrong, he showed all elements of that conversation. He then went with what he believes, and that projected through the show. But this isn't an agenda of Disney or anybody else. This is the writer's opinions coming through, as all good sci-fi should be. I would say that the Orville is woke, but in the right way, like all sci-fi is. Orville is awake. It discusses several very uncomfortable things in our society. It does, again, in this episode. I think this episode should have been called The Prime Directive myself. I do love how in the Orville, in this particular episode, there is the whole thing with Prime Directive that they don't interfere with society. But they actually gave us a bit of depth in this episode on why that is. Rather than just a Star Trek way of doing it, which is, well, that's just the Prime Directive and that's just what we do, and they talk about it every so often maybe. We actually have a specific reason why the Union has this policy, this law, this how we do not act like God in their galaxy. But anyway, getting back to the woke thing. There are elements with this story that are uncomfortable. There are issues that are raised within this series that are at times uncomfortable to watch, but it's done through a medium of sci-fi, which is perfect to ask those questions. You can come away with it completely disagreeing with Seth McFarlane and completely hating the show if you insist. But I personally think this is a really important way and unique within most of different ways of media, that you can tell these stories and you can have these discussions and raise these issues with metaphors and with, alien races that you can't do in other media. On the subject of woke as well, I'm going to talk about the character, and I've written a name down because I can never remember it, Ensign Burke, who has been accused of being the typical Mary Sue. She came into the series. She had a very disturbing background that she was a lesbian, and even though that was never specifically said, I don't think, it was very heavily implied. I think we got to a point where it was more than just implied, to be fair. But she was a lesbian, and her partner, the love of her life, died during the Kaylon attack. She hated Isaac. People have said that she basically came on, she's a genius, like this fourth dimensional thing, and she couldn't do any wrong. She's the typical Mary Sue. But then she sacrifices herself at the end of episode 9, spoilers again, sorry. And it then comes through that they have that full circle of her character, that she puts her hatred to one side and she does the right thing, even though that means the Kaylon, who she wants to wipe out, would survive within the galaxy. But it gives a hope for the galaxy for actual peace. The whole point of her character was for that story arc. Yes, okay, she might have been a bit of a Mary Sue. I don't really like that term, but she might have been that. But it was for a reason. And again, that is something that Seth MacFarlane does repeatedly in the series, and why the series isn't woke, and I don't care what you say it isn't. But the main thing I'm going to say about the Orville, and why I think it might genuinely be one of the most important TV shows on TV right now, is that it does it in a way that is just thoughtful, with a sense of humour, a grown-up sense of humour now. And even though a series 4 of the Orville is not confirmed yet, that Seth MacFarlane still says, look, it's what Disney decide. I'm hoping we get a New Horizons Series 2 or an Orville Series 4 really, really soon. It's genuinely a grown-up sci-fi show for grown-ups. And it might be my favourite sci-fi show on TV right now. And that's saying quite a lot, because Strange New Worlds was bloody good. So, tell me what you think. Get in the comments, what did you think of Series 3 of Orville, New Horizons? And, is this show woke, or is it actually woke in a good way? If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, it really helps us out. Also, if you enjoy the content, please consider becoming a fully fledged Sci-Trekker and hit that join button. As always, guys, I'll see you next time. Stay safe.